week here on Wednesday. Welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, so you can download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's so great to reconnect with a dear friend of the program. I had a chance to see this guy live at WeedCon West. We were just taking in some of his trio work. He absolutely blew me away. I mean, just being who he is, but on top of that, playing with Don Heffington and this unreal bass player, and playing with Robbie Krieger, and always bringing a lot of joy and a lot of love to the bandstand, and he's been doing it for a long time. Fred Tackett, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Good to be back, man. Good to be back.
Good to hear you, brother. You know, I was transcribing. There's a big tribute concert to a fallen hero and friend of mine tonight at the Capitol Theater in Portchester, New York, which I know you and Fred have played at it, and maybe Little Feat as well. And I was transcribing this interview with the manager of this individual, who I will reveal in a minute. And this manager was telling me that his first solo shows live, he had a chance to open for Government Mule and Little Feat. And the cat that tragically took his own life less than a month ago was a guy named Neil Casal. And I wanted to know, did you know, that was one of the things
I didn't, I just got a phone call. I called Don Heffington, and he was at the airport leaving with Bob Glob, the bass player, to go to play at that concert.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I know the name, I've just
right.
Around the circles of people, I see his name all the time. And Don was in a hurry. He was going through security or something. But I didn't know anything about it. I just heard you say that he took his own life. I don't know what.
No, you know what? This is just funny because it was. I mean, I don't expect you to stretch back to mid '95 and remember the acts that were opening for Little Feat, but it is pretty touching to me that. That he had a solo career. He had a whole career before he ever really got into the jam scene. He was never a jam band guy. He was always a singer-songwriter, and then through a confluence of things, he worked his way into this scene. And but I just thought it was cool when I was listening to his manager talking about the first solo tour he did was Government Mule, and he opened some shows for you guys, which was just, I'm like, there's Tackett again. But I guess we know, we've chronicled the slow demise and the torturous demise of the great Lowell George, but to me, I haven't, knock on wood, I have not been affected by a lot of deep close personal loss in my life, and even on this journey, whether it's Hugh Masekela or Hal Blaine or list goes on and on and on. These are guys that I never met before. They had hardy lives, they had great careers, and they transitioned. But for Neil, he was 50 years old. He had seemingly everything in front of him, and I understand life is a contradictory thing, and we can't figure all these things out. But I wanted to ask you, was there an experience in your early career, or in your career, when you lost somebody dearly, tragically, to suicide?
Oh, yeah. A real close friend of ours is named Carlos Vega, was a drummer.
I know that guy. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he's just a great drummer and a real close friend. We played all kinds of little sideline gigs together, as well as many sessions. And he was a big fan of Richie. He could do Richie. He was just and Billy Payne and I went on tour to Australia with Simon and Garfunkel with Carlos, and he was playing with James Taylor, and was on supposed to be on his way to the airport to go on a tour, and killed himself. And nobody could ever, think, well, why did he do that?
Right.
Man, Carlos such a happy dude, and It was just a great drummer, great musician, had children, and you just don't know why anybody does anything, There's all kinds of speculation, about this and that and the other, but nobody knows. It was just a total, just absolute mystery and shock.
Can you, I mean, as somebody who is really just, turning back the hands of time, I mean, you're like, like playing better than you ever have in your life, in my mind. And like, I mean, I know you have a lot of supports around you and you have a lot of things to live for, but can you just talk, like riff in your own way about this nexus of, with an artist, with somebody who's truly trying to procure their art as a livelihood, like this nexus of genius and depression, or genius and addiction? Why is that so? You're in it. I'm not. But I mean, you've seen it. Like, what is it about that consistently comes up when it relates to people that are truly? I'm not talking about craftsmen who are, just doing something that, whatever gig comes up, they're just singing for their supper. But I'm talking about somebody who's truly an artist who's trying to make a livelihood out of that. What is that nexus about genius and mania? What is that about?
I wish I knew, but the thing that comes to mind. I mean, I'm like I've always identified with Eric Clapton as a craftsman. A journeyman.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I started out. I think sometimes I think that it's like it's the only thing that you know how to do, and I think Van Dyke Park summed up the whole business in one little phrase, which talent isn't everything.
Wow.
And that speaks a mountain, man. I mean, because there's just so many people that have so much talent and abilities and shit, and you go out there and it's like really, 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 really doubtful if you're going to make any kind of impression. If you do, it's a whole confluence of your talent and luck,
right.
And what Van Dyke Park was saying, talent ain't everything. And I guess, you start to think, what else could I do? I can't do anything else. This is the only thing I know how to do. This is what I do. I write songs, I sing, I do whatever I do. Give me some money and I'm going to buy some milk for my kids or whatever, which is kind of like where I came from the time I was 16 years old. I was playing, instead of getting allowance, I was getting $15 a gig,
Right,
and I always
right.
had money, So, and I just went on doing that, and I think a lot of musicians do that, and a lot of really famous musicians used to play in wedding bands, or
Absolutely.
whatever, I played with some, amazing. With Don Heffington and I and Bob Glob have played 1 billion weddings together.
Oh my dude! Please let me know the next. I want to sneak into those weddings, man. I mean, but here's the thing,
But that's a good gig, actually. If you don't even want to know, it's like one of the best gigs. But anyway, I think it's just a desperation of this kind of thing of like, well, I have nothing else to do, and this isn't going anywhere. I'm playing the same clubs every 2 weeks, and if that was why it was so refreshing when Little Feat said, okay, and it was a real drag that Paul had medical issues to deal with, but the fact that we stopped and got off that grind, you end up playing the same theaters, the same clubs every once a year, and you do it, and it's just it's this long grind that goes on and on and on, and you don't see anything that's going to change it at all. And unfortunately, we had the wherewithal to be able to stop and say, okay, that's enough. We're just not going to do this anymore, and then maybe go out and play 3 or 4 gigs, and all of a sudden things got a whole lot better. But because absence makes the heart grow fonder. But you get in that trap, man. It's what are you going to do? Especially if you do have a family or something,
Well, that was the thing about. Just focusing on, is it with Neil? Everyone's situation is different. He didn't have a family, but at the same time, is it also like Van Dyke Parks said that talent is only part of it. Chuck Rainey told me, he's like, luck has a lot to do with it. But the thing is that is it people's inability to see their own genius, to appreciate, and to do sometimes people not leave enough space for themselves? They're givers. They just give all the time. And then, in Neil's case, I think that part of the issue is that he just was constantly giving to everybody in some ways. He was also responsible for a lot of other people's livelihoods in the other bands that he had. And something told me that he just never could appreciate the genius he did have. You said it's the only thing you can do. But if you can't appreciate if it's the only thing you can do, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think the opposite is true as well. I mean, if you do if you do have an appreciation
Right.
of what you have going for yourself, and nobody else is digging it, or it's just not going anywhere, it can be very, very, very frustrating, I would imagine. I don't know, Neil, so I don't have any idea what kind of issues he was going through and what his life was like. I don't even know what he looked like. But
It's cool.
it's a drag, man, and it happens a lot. I would imagine, But guys, there's 1,000 billion reasons. But I think that people, it's a real hard life, man, and only a very few. It is. I've been very blessed to have a really great career, and the fact that Jimmy Webb walked into that bar in Honolulu was,
Wow.
a momentous occasion.
I mean,
in
but
my
I mean,
life,
I mean, like,
I
I
met
mean,
my wife and everything. Everything in my life was based around that guy just happening to come in and saying, "What's the name of that song you were playing?" That changed my entire life, and that's just pure luck. Whatever, Ode to Billy Joe, man, saved my life.
well, also,
I was just going to disappear off into the tropics with this Filipino group. We would have been going into, yacht rock. I would have been down there in tropicals playing clubs with these guys, man, and very nice beachy places all over the Far East and Hawaii, and it would have been just peachy keen. But this guy walked in and said, what was the name of that song you were playing? And next thing I know, I'm in the middle of a scene in Hollywood. So that's just, it's a freaky, crazy business, whatever Hunter Thompson said about it. It's just insane.
well,
It's insane. Did anybody? And then you get into it because you just love it so much. You love to play music, and you want to get out there and play in front of people, and get that, get that approval. And it's a real good big drug, man. And you're just thinking, man, if this guy could be doing so well, why shouldn't I be able to do so well? And you're sort of chasing it, and it's something else, man.
I was going to say, there's so many things running through my mind. First of all, Branch Rickey said luck is the residue of design. So the fact that you were, crashing the backboards with the Filipino group, you were setting yourself up for some real luck. I
moved out of Oklahoma City. I was in Oklahoma City playing 6 nights a week in a club, a situation that has totally disappeared in America, but it was like my college internship, playing behind all these grade C acts that came through and playing Tijuana brass music and shit. And these guys were one of the acts, and they said, "Hey, get in this station wagon with us and go to Florida." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, let's go." You have to, the fact that you have to make moves. I was definitely trying to make a move, to keep moving, man. So because I had been there for 2 years, and it was like my version of Timothy Leary's tune in and drop out kind of thing. I thought, well, I'm going to drop out. I'm going to get into a station wagon with 4 Filipino guys and take off for Florida, man. Who knows what's going to happen? And that's the kind of leap of faith you have to do. You have to have, So, yeah, that's what I mean. I think there is a design in the fact that I was willing to move, That's what willing to be moving, man,
Well, there it is, right?
So,
I mean, like you talked very candidly. Well, first of all, I'm not sure the years that when you started Little Feat again, and then Paul had health issues, but so sometimes there's this sort of break that's needed. But I remember you talked to me about with Dylan, you guys are working out these tunes for 3 weeks, and you're driving down the hill, and you're like, what the hell? What are we doing with all this stuff? And you were kind of feeling sorry, not sorry for yourself, you're just getting frustrated. And then all of a sudden you were like, what the hell am I, I'm like, there'd be 1.5 million guitar players that would want this gig. So my question is really, at the end of the day, how, obviously, great wife, incredible family. I don't think that I mean, if somebody took your arms and away and you prevented you from playing music, I mean, I don't think it would stop your existence. You have a lot, but I mean, in the musical realm, because it's a burn, because you're playing the same venues, because in some cases you might have stalkers and you might have crazy fans and you might not be making any money and you might be depressed to begin with. I mean, how is Fred Tackett? How have you always been able, even so, once you got accepted into the recording industry and obviously Little Feat and writing, how have you sought salvation and longitude in music?
Well, I think writing songs has been, my own personal, like, salvation kind of thing. When I go off to go to work, I'm going off to go to work for somebody else. Now, playing with Little Feat's also part of it. But before then, it would be, you're going to fix somebody's washing machine or whatever, to go make their help make their record, help do their vision or whatever. It's not your thing.
Right.
And the fact that I knew Jimmy Webb, and he basically taught me. I was always interested, but he taught me, basically how to write songs just by watching him, not telling me anything, but just by being around him. I've learned a lot, and so that always has been my personal salvation. And the fact that to me it was not my life; it was a gig. I mean,
right.
When I was with Bob Dylan, and I remember Tim Drummond, rest his peace,
oh,
man,
God,
my
yeah.
brother.
Yeah, man.
He, that gig was his, that was his life, man. I mean, he wanted to sit in the car with the boss, and I would say, Tim, this gig is going to end, man. Just look at Bob's career. He's had a different band. He's going to get a different band. You're not going to be his bass player until you die.
Wow,
man.
don't get so geeked up about it.
Thing,
Wow, man.
And he was like, no, that's not, maybe for you, Tackett. I'm going, it's just a gig, man. It's just, but that was his life.
Right. I did. Look, he was playing
my
those shows.
life is here at home, man.
Right.
I got wives and kids and grandchildren. That's my thing, man. And the going and playing gigs is what I do for a living, and it's a lot of fun, and I love it. And I'm really lucky that I get to do something so cool for a living. But that's my living. That's my work, man. This is, my home.
Very interesting point. I think you just encapsulated it perfectly, because I think in someone like Neil's case, who I did know, music was his entire existence. And Steve Cropper said something very profound, where he said that younger musicians today, because they take the music so seriously, they miss out on life, on real life. And I thought it took me a minute to really understand what he said, but I think you just encapsulated it. Tim Drummond, truthfully, was playing like as if he was having the time of his life on those live Dylan shows. I mean, everybody's having a ball, but he is playing like it was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. It's like, and yet you're in the car saying like, well, what you were saying to him is, what do you got planned next? Or what else is going on in your life that, is going to give you some satisfaction, because this is not going to last forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just, I never had a plan, I've just always just been open to it. And so I never would think about like talking to Tim and saying, what do you think you'd be doing next? But nobody's ever got any idea, man. Every career change I've had has just come totally out of the blue, So I've never have had a plan, but the fact that you get so dependent upon what that one gig or whatever it is you're doing, like you think that's going to go on forever. Michael Nesmith used to joke about people who would have a big hit record, and they'd go buy this house in Beverly Hills, and he'd go visit them and say, yeah, this is really nice. Too bad you can't keep it. And he'll go, what do you mean? He's going, how long do you think you're going to keep up this income stream, man?
Right,
Maybe
right.
3 years or a couple of years or something?
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
What are you talking about here?
Wow.
But when you get into that thing and everything's just going your way, and you think, well, this is going to go forever. And for some people it does. I mean, like Paul McCartney. I mean, Rolling Stones. There's people that, it's never going to stop. But for a great majority of people, it is, it's only a certain sort of thing, and you don't, you think it's just going to go on forever. Whatever gig you have, whatever career you have, you think, oh, this is just great, and it's going to happen forever. And most people, logic would tell you that it's not. You know, 2 or 3 years is good, so you should take that money and stick it away, and a lot of people do.
Well, we're talking to a sage here, Fred Tackett. We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this audio clip in for you, and we'll come back and break it down.
He was Leroy Vinegar was probably one of the most early influences in my life. I was merely 13 years old when I started playing the guitar, and I was in school with his son, Mark. And, he said, rather than you guys going out and running around at night, I'm just going to get you some instruments and you guys can just jam here in the basement. And that's what we did. We improvised off of Chico Hamilton's Man from Two Worlds.
You are the luckiest son of a bitch I've ever... That is the greatest story of all time, man. That is unbelievable.
Oh, it's unbelievable. He used to take us to Shelley's Manhole. I'd sit literally 2 feet from the stage and watch Dexter Gordon or Tony Williams or Miles or Monk or Charlie Mingus. It was like, what an education, and funny, where we went to grammar school, right on the alleyway behind it was this little jazz club called The Bit, where Elijah Jamal would play all the time. So it was like, I had this older brother who was like a real jazz aficionado, and so he had all the records, so I'd hear the records, and then I'd be walking home from school, and I'd walk by The Bit, and you'd hear them playing in there, and you go, oh man, that's the stuff right there.
You have any idea who that is?
No, man.
That was a grainy that was your buddy Paul Barrere from my interview.
I was going to say, the only person I could think of was Paul Barrere, but I couldn't recognize his voice. I was listening because I know his brother, Mike, and everything, and I kept thinking, God, the only person I know that would apply to is Paul.
Well, then throw the guests out there. Throw the guests out there next time.
I couldn't recognize his voice through the phone.
I know. When did you? So I'm trying to bridge this thing because you were obviously steeped in. You were playing jazz drums essentially in Little Rock in Oklahoma, and then you used to go to Shelley's Manhole all the time. But when did you first cross paths with Barrere? Did you know that? Did you know that story about Leroy and those cats? That to me is like the coolest foundational stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, Paul is, he talks about Leroy Vinegar all the time, and he lived next door to Stan Levy's son.
Stan Levy, you mean Stan Levy's son?
The drummer.
Well, Stan Levy, the bebop drummer. He lived next to him?
Yeah, Stan Levy, the bebop drummer. And Paul used to live, next door to him. And
gosh.
He if you want to see something, that guy's
yeah.
He did a thing on documentary on him. His son did, and it's just Stan Levy sitting in a chair and telling these ridiculous stories.
He was one of the serious drummers.
Paul's always talked about Leroy Vinegar. First time I met Paul was when Lowell, brought him in, brought the band. I came in to do "Fool Yourself" on the Dixie Chicken record, and Paul had just joined the band. That's the first time we met. We were just talking about that a couple of days ago. When we did "Fool Yourself."
When you got to I'm just trying to figure out what he's talking about. When did you get to L.A. how much of an age difference is there between you and Paul? Are you basically the same age?
I'm 3 years older than Paul.
Okay, so he's talking more. And when did you actually touch down at Jimmy Webb's barbecue pit at his house there, where you stayed? What year was that?
That was just the very tail end, November of 1967. And right before 68 New Year's.
And it's fair to say that maybe that whole meeting at Warner Brothers didn't happen till 72 with "Fool Yourself"?
Yeah.
Is that right? So
even though Paul said that he came to Jimmy's house once and played some songs for him.
Really?
The tape.
Oh my
Yeah,
God!
I missed it. Yeah,
You were
but yeah, Lowell knew Paul's brother, Mike.
right.
They went to high school together, and so he knew, Paul as being the little brother guy, and knew he played the blues all. I mean, my wife Patricia knew Paul from high school and all the high school parties. She said Paul was always sitting in the corner playing the blues guitar.
Wow, amazing,
Whatever's
amazing.
going down. So, yeah, he was like always around there, but I didn't, I had never met him until different things.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, you can relate it to Paul too, is just the idea of, if you could talk about like a sort of a part of your bag of tricks, trumpet or guitar or drums, where you compensate for something you don't have. Maybe nobody's going to, mistake you for, Kenny Burrell, but, you're going to throw in some humor. You're gonna compensate by, can you talk a little bit about something where you learned along the way to compensate for what you don't have instead of, trying to beat your head against the wall with trying to develop something that is not really part of your natural pedigree? Is there something you can talk to as it relates to this? Because you guys you guys are all like.
It all comes down to what I always think of as style and trying to make yourself somewhat unique. Because I mean, you can chase. You hear John McLaughlin, and you can go, holy shit,
right,
and chase after that,
right,
and you can chase after that. But I'm not ever going to be John McLaughlin. That's just not who I am, right? But I've learned some licks and things in roadhouses in Little Rock, Arkansas, at the old Beverly Gardens and stuff club from Mouse Hockersmith and guitar players and stuff. So, that's in my thing. So I come and I play that kind of stuff, and that's something that a bunch of other people, they don't know this dude. Levon Helm did, but other guys didn't, So I think it's really important to have a style. When I first started playing sessions, everybody, I think I told you this before, everybody was like enamored with Larry Carlton, who's probably one of the finest guitar players to come out of Los Angeles. And he always played this 335,
Right.
And I saw, and everybody I knew had a 335 guitar, and brought it into sessions, and we're trying to sound like Larry. And I thought, I was trying to sound like Mike Dacey and had a Stratocaster. So I can't, it's just trying to get something that sets you apart for what it is that you do. And as people would hire me as like, as whatever kind of little style I had, as opposed to whatever virtuosic brilliance that I didn't have, So that's my compensating thing is it's really important to develop your own style rather than try to play like everybody else. And there's guys I know in the studios that can play like John McLaughlin and Gabor Zawa, and you just name somebody and they can do him, right now. But
I mean, that's the whole point of blues or jazz is like, what is your story? So, I mean, if you're just channeling somebody else.
So that's what you got to do is tell your little story. That's what I always say to Paul, and we're getting ready to sing. We're doing a long intro or something. I'll say, tell him your little story, man. So that's what you're doing.
That's
man.
right.
That's what you're doing. You tell him a story.
Did going back to Hawkinsmith, the cat in Little Rock? I mean, obviously he was not a known quantity nationally, but I mean, he was one of these guys that was like ear trained. And what did you learn from him?
Oh, I didn't even know what you called. When I first went out and sat in through a friend of my best friend, sort of dragged me out to these like funky roadhouses.
Yeah,
which I'm so glad he did.
Yeah, so glad.
And we started sitting in. He getting these guys to let us sit in, and we were just like 16 years old, and these guys would let us stand on the bandstand and play along with them, you know. And I remember asking one after, I said, "What do you call this music?" And this guy says, "Blues." And, you know, and I said, "Well, what kind of records?" And I went, "Go buy a B.B. King record." I mean, I had no idea, you know. I knew "Walk Don't Run" by the Ventures and Jimmy Reed and Bo Diddley, you know, like everybody else, you know. And I go out and I'm playing, you know, everywhere I go, there's a pretty girl there, and all these songs there. I'm like, what is this stuff? Give me just a little bitty bit of your love, all those harmony guitar parts and stuff. And I go, what the fuck, man? So anyway, he was just a guy. I mean, he was just, you know, an alcoholic character of who played around Little Rock and was very popular. And or haircut, I'd never seen that. And I started, you know, I said, "What do you do? What do you use on that?" "Oh, Vaseline." You know, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I was just this babe, man, going, what is this? Where are you guys coming from?
It's interesting because a lot of people.
And then it was sort of the really weird thing was I was telling the guys, my Woodstock friends, is everybody would go off to, because Paul and I were just in Japan with Jimmy Weeder and the Weight Band and doing our little thing.
I love Weeder.
A couple of clubs. And we were talking about Levon and Ronnie Hawkins and the whole scene up in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Canada. And every summer in Little Rock, all the guys that I would go sit in with, all the cats would disappear and go to Canada for the summer. And I was like, what is up with going to Canada, man? I had no idea what that is, you know. But they were all getting gigs, you know, through Levon and all that scene, you know. And so Arkansas musicians were popular up in Toronto, you know. So
it's amazing. Well, actually, for a lot of people that may not know, Levon actually was a guitar player at first, so he was learning from these other cats. And you know, it's funny you brought up Tim Drummond, because I just stumbled across this record, and I was like, I just wonder if Tackett ever collaborated with Lonnie Mack.
No, I just met him a couple times. He was a good friend of Tim's, man.
I mean, what?
I think he always wanted my gig, man. I'll tell you the truth.
He wanted the Dylan gig?
Fuck you, man. I want to play with Bob Dylan.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of competition. I mean, I want to be clear about something. You develop your own story. What do you have to say for yourself? What is the Tackett niche or unique story? And then it was a combination of things like, put Tackett out of the mix. You know, what's Tackett doing over there? And Payne's like, listen, you take him out of the mix, you're going to be missing that hi-hat, right? I mean, is that what you're talking about as far as like that unique flavor in the studio that you added? The idea that there was some intangible thing. It wasn't necessarily notes, it wasn't lines or phrasings, it was just an essence.
Yeah, no, that's that Freddie Green syndrome that my dad always put into me. My dad just constantly talked to me about Freddie Green, how he trained all the drummers without them knowing they were getting trained. And that's playing acoustic guitar. That's a whole other thing from the style thing I was talking about, which was it applies to all instruments, whether it's acoustic or electric, but I was thinking like about playing the electric guitar at that point. But playing the rhythm thing was just, it's something that a lot of people, like this particular producer, he's looking for the bells and whistles. He's looking for the synthesizers and the electric guitar parts.
I love it. Tackett's bringing the acoustic in there.
And Billy was just pointing out that there is a bass that we're trying to work off of here, and,
huge,
and he's it.
Huge.
He and the drummer and
huge.
The bass player are it. So, that's what's happening. Take him out and see what happens to your groove, man. Your groove's gone. So that's just I would learn that from my dear old dad.
Well, I mean, stepping back from 50,000 feet away, Kenny Malone, great drummer out of Nashville, old school cat. He he said, what I really miss in pop music, and you go back to Fred Tackett in his gravy years, pop music was not just listenable, it was beautiful music. And he said, Kenny Malone said, he goes, what I'm really missing today is that acoustic rhythm guitar. And in pop music, and I wonder if you feel like, because the transition from acoustic to electric instrumentation, I mean, essentially with Jimmy Webb and those guys, you're playing acoustic pianos or grand pianos, and maybe there was an upright bass, and maybe there was a Fender bass, but essentially the music got super loud at a certain point where the acoustic guitar almost became obsolete. I mean, do you agree about that? I mean, where you said this producer's looking for these bells and whistles and synthesizers as opposed to just having a bass, having a foundation for groove. I mean, that seemed to just kind of go away.
Thing. Yeah, I mean, there's people hear things different. I mean, that's the way that time of music. I mean, all of Keith Richards is all about the acoustic guitar. If you read any of his biographies or just any interview, dude, at one point or another, he'll start talking about layering acoustic guitars, and that's, if you listen to Sympathy for the Devil, Satisfaction, those songs, they're like, tons of acoustic guitars, and there's like this one little electric with a fuzz tone going down, 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 down. But the whole rocking thing is all those acoustics. Keith knows that very well. And he will tell you in a heartbeat. But so that's just that kind of thing. Now you have. I was just listening to a bunch of pop music driving around just to keep checking out what's going down.
Yeah. And
I'm hearing like a lot of, and I don't, everybody's got to, have their music and every kind of music style. Like when I was in college, they told me music is organized sounds and noise is unorganized sounds. So when somebody comes up and says, that stuff the kids are listening to, that ain't music. And I go, yeah, what it is. It's just not the music that you particularly are fond of.
Right.
But it's definitely music.
Right.
So, kids everybody's got to, you got to move on all the time, And so now I'm hearing like a real processed kind of a cymbal sound and a really tight, like brushes on a snare drum or something like that, amplified up in a mix with synthesizers and things and a lot of hip hop records and things. So you're getting on a lot of the R&B. I listen to the R&B stations and a lot of the soul records that you hear, what the songs that are not rap songs but actually are, have melody lines kind of thing, chick singers and stuff. They're like got very, very, very different rhythm section now that doesn't have like that a groove that Aretha Franklin had or the groove that James Brown or Ray Charles have. It's just not there. That's not what they're doing, and they're not even trying. They're not trying to do that. So I mean that's totally legitimate, and God bless them.
I just want to hear. Sorry, I want to be clear.
It's just all different stuff, man. And you pay your money, and you take your choice.
No, the idea is that music is organized sound, and what was the other thing that you learned in college?
Noise is unorganized sound.
Noise is now. So when somebody
chaotic, unorganized, not necessarily ugly or anything, but just not organized in any way.
Like, do you hear?
That's why Frank Zappa would do things like when I point at you, stand up and go eek, and you stamp your feet. When I point at you, stamp your feet 3 times. It's like you have like a time limit, like 1 minute and 30 seconds, and this is going to happen. And when I point at you, you do this, and when I point at you, you do that, and that's avant-garde music. We used to play that kind of thing in libraries and with little old ladies with white gloves. My composition teacher used to say the worst sound in the world is white gloves clapping. In a library when you just played this totally out thing. But yeah, it's music, man. It's organized sounds.
Well, let me ask you. You just used this incredibly. You listen to the R&B stations. So they have a different, more processed sound. You'll be very proud of me, Fred. My first book is going to be published in the next week or two. I look forward
cool.
to you, and you'll be. This is only volume 1, so Tackett's coming down the pike. But I want Joe Sample's in the first book, and I want to read you this passage out of it, and then you can riff on it any way you want. He said, in the black community, whether it started in church or it started in the neighborhood, all the ingredients of African American music and American music also were always part of lives of all the musicians. In my neighborhood, I grew up in a Creole Catholic church, and I heard the typical music you would hear in a Catholic church. I was at Mass on Sundays. I was an altar boy at one point. I was in Mass for 1 hour, and then I would go home, and on the way home, I would pass by 10 black Baptist churches. All my friends, if they weren't Baptist, they were African Methodist. They put on this gig outside my parents' home that was rhythm and blues and gospel and soul. It was all mixed there. It was some form of the Christian church. A black neighborhood had many, many, many denominations. I heard gospel all day long. In front of my house was a vacant field, and every summer the holy rollers, the sanctified people, would put a tent there. It was a World War II circus tent, and maybe they could get 40 people in there. It was stifling hot. They had a band. I don't know if they had a piano in there, but they had guitars and banjos, and they conducted their music. This is the key part. It was all based on the pentatonic scale. When you talk about the pentatonic scale today, who is using the pentatonic scale more than anyone? It's the white girls singing in today's R&B and pop market. The pentatonic scale has now reached into the white market. I can't remember the names of the girls, but they're usually blonde, hot and sexy, and they do their melismas. They hit the high notes, and all of that is based on the pentatonic scale, which in the old days was called moaning. You want to riff on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that black music has played an incredibly influential role. Everybody's has always been trying to copy it and get that feeling, get that spirit. But the pentatonic scale, I mean, look at Debussy. He used it pretty good, pretty effectively as well. And so did Ralph Vaughan Williams. So the pentatonic scale has been around a long time. Black people did not necessarily be the first people to find it. But, yeah, I mean, we call it the funky scale, man.
Right.
The funky scale, which is slightly smaller than the pentatonic scale, but it's what you heard, and it's definitely like people heard it and copied it, That's what you do. You hear something you like and you copy it and try to make it your own.
When you listen to when you listen,
but there was a whole bunch of when Joe Sample was doing session work, there was a whole bunch of girl singers that that sang that style, man.
I think he was just making the point. This was an interview I did with him a couple of years ago. He just said like the more whatever you call R&B or soul music, it's the whatever is being being copped by white female artists, which is it was just fascinating.
Yeah, white male artists as well.
Absolutely.
Any Ed Sheerans or anybody else is they're singing the blues in their own way. Everybody's singing the blues in their own way, and that's what I used to go to hear gospel music all the time, and that was a funny thing when this Japanese trip. When I was a session player, and before then, when I was working in Oklahoma City in that club 6 nights a week, I became really good friends with Billy Maxwell, who's a drummer.
Are you kidding me?
And
Billy and I love that. I've done a couple interviews with that guy. He's a monster.
Oh yeah, well Billy, I drove him home from his high school graduation to his gig, man. We were like close buddies, man.
Jesus.
And then he followed us out to that, and he worked in this band called the Jays with this guy named Harlan Rogers and guitar player named
Hadley Hawkinsmith, dude. I'm still trying to track it. He won't talk to me, man. He won't talk to me.
Well,
I'm
I don't know him all that well, but during the time that I was doing session work, Billy was like the top producer for gospel records, man. Andre Crouch and his sister and Danny Bell, and we used to, and whatever Marvin Gaye cool songs were going down, he would he was hiring Wah Watson and all the cats, everybody, Dean Parks, and
David T.
myself got to
Walker,
play.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody was on his sessions and stuff, and he would do versions of all those songs. I mean, they'd be just as funky as they could be, and they'd be like the latest Whitney Houston record or whatever, But the thing was, I just was in Japan, I told you, and Paul and I and the boys in the weight band arrived in Tokyo the night before we were going to play, and Chick Corea was playing in the same club, and so we all staggered over to hear a little bit of it because we were so jet lagged. But he had John Patitucci playing bass and Dave Weckl playing drums. And, they sounded wonderful. And so anyway, we're all staying in the same hotel. And the next morning I'm down and I see Jimmy Weeder talking, and say hi to him. And turns out he's talking to John Patitucci, right?
Sure.
He's just some, amazing,
monster,
amazing fucking bass player, right? So Jimmy Weeder introduces me to him, and John goes, "Oh, I know you. I played with Billy Maxwell and all." He sounded like, "What?"
Oh,
It turns out, he's like big in the church and knows Billy very, very well, and knew all my guys, Harlan and all these guys. And I'm thinking, records that we all played on together.
Wait, I want to be clear about something.
Just blew my mind in the middle of Tokyo for this guy to be saying, "Oh yeah, I know all about you, man. These guys talk about you all the time." And I'm like, "What?"
Wait, hold on for a second. I want to be clear about something. Okay, he was talking about the record. You were on Crouch. Were you on Maxwell Gospel sessions a lot, like Crouch sessions? Is that what?
Yeah, I did a whole bunch of them. Yeah.
Dude, I need to get hip to that stuff because sometimes the credits are not always there. I mean, but so what he's saying is, I know you from those sessions, and then the fact that
he just knew me from all that circle of guys.
That's so cool, man.
Because he played with Billy all the time. I think Billy was like probably the musical director of this gigantic church here in L.A. that they had this very hip band. And I think John probably played in it for a while or did some, because he used to live out here and do sessions. He would just say, I was just thinking, he comes from this incredible, rarefied New York City jazz scene, and he's talking about my homeboys from Oklahoma City.
Dude, I mean, come on, man. Dude, I mean, dude, that's
what it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it.
Dude, I mean,
Hayward used to say.
I mean, it's New York is the real grease is being cooked down in your neck of the woods. I mean, I will say that Maxwell, when I interviewed him, could have easily been roadkill. He was saved, actually. He was doing a lot of heavy drugs back in the day, and I believe Hawkinsmith and a couple of cats came and got him into the church, and that really got him Harlan. I'm still looking to get to Harlan and Hadley. Those guys are nasty, man. But this,
yeah, man. Harlan used to play in this band called the Jades.
The Jades.
He had like this black light on. He played pedals with his feet, right?
Oh, I love this.
And he had green, like velour green boots, and he would put this black light on the bottom of the organ, so that it's like you had this day glow green boots like bouncing over the pedals, man. I mean, it was something else to see, man. I mean, they were so funky.
I'm sorry. You know what? I got to send you one of my interviews with Bill, because now it's just jarring my memory. He started to talk about Tackett. We had a big conversation about Fred Tackett. I'm going to send it to you because he was talking about that.
Oh, cool.
This is
we go way back, man.
Way back. Because when he said
man.
that, he said he wound up in Oklahoma City. I said, "Did you know Fred Tackett?" And then we went off on that. I'll have to find that for you. This is something I wanted to ask you about. Being that you were just in Japan, you are actually not on this. You did not, for the record, Lowell, Fred Tackett didn't start playing live with Little Feat until after Lowell's death. But this is something, maybe you could square the circle on this. There's an amazing record store here in Tucson called Wooden Tooth Records, and there was this private pressing in there of somebody called Akiko Yano. And it's entitled Japanese Girl, Yano, okay?
Right.
1976 Hollywood Sound Studio, Yano, Richie, Gradney, Barrere, Lowell on shakuhachi, flute, and electric guitar. Clayton, Makoto Yano. So it was Yano and Yano, and then this pedal steel player, Hiroki Kornizawa. And I'm like, this, and so it was pressed on her. I mean, do you ever remember anything like, because that, apparently those cats.
Oh, yeah. No,
who
we
were the
just
Yano
talking about
cats?
it in Japan a lot. She was a piano player, right?
Well, we had Akiko was piano clavinet, and then Hiroki was pedal steel.
That's why Billy wasn't on the gig.
so I mean, like, how did that?
She was a jazz piano player.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember very well. It was yesterday when they were doing that project, and I went down and hung out, just standing around drinking some beers at a party or so with them at that time when she was around in town and they were doing that project. So I remember, when they did it.
Well, I guess something like what was that? They
also did that Chico Hamilton record too,
Well, that, I mean, don't even get me. I wish you were on that record. I wish you were on that record, man. I mean, that is the crazy. No, but I want to. I mean, do you have any idea who was the spearheader of this? I mean, was Lowell? I know Lowell played great shakuhachi flute, but I mean, did he pull those cats over from Japan? I mean, I know that. How did that even materialize?
I think that she was just had become a fan of Little Feat.
Wow.
And she wanted that band to play with, her.
Dude, I mean, I didn't get a chance to hear it. I've never even heard this album. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I don't think I've heard it either. But it came up a lot.
Did you, David Spinoza told me something one time, and I want to relate it to your career too. Not that you were always taking, long solos, but Spinoza was in New York, and Dr. John and Arif Mardin yanked him into the studio at Atlantic one day. Spinoza was on his way to go to a jingle session, and they're like, "Listen, we need you to lay down a guitar solo on this Meters tune." Just round it out and let's go. And so he played this first kind of what he thought was a warm-up solo, and he's like, okay, let me give it a shot. And they said, no, that was perfect. You nailed it. It was great. Thank you. And he was like, what? He's like, I thought I had a clam on that. And so he walked out, and he didn't know what song it was, okay? And so the next thing you know, he's in a cab with 3 axes over his shoulders, going to a session. And the cab driver's like, oh, you're a guitar player. You'll appreciate this. This is my new favorite song. And he turns up this Dr. John song, and it's Right Place, Wrong Time. All right?
Oh, yeah.
And Spinoza's like, holy cow. He's like, you're not going to believe that. He's like, that's me. And the cab driver's like, you're full of shit. He didn't believe him. And it was like, I'm like, I think part of this process, the biggest, I mean, we've been cooking for 55 minutes. The word you said that has rung out about modern music is processed music. Processed. All our food is processed now. Everything's what I'm saying is, how many times did you even have a chance? Did you even listen to playback most of the time? When you walked out of the studios, you didn't even know what you played. You didn't even hear back.
Sometimes, most of the times I would listen to a playback. That was one of the things that showed whether you gave a dang or not about what you were doing.
If you
a lot of guys.
Right.
When I first started, I remember telling my wife, none of these guys even listen back to what what's going on with the song and stuff, and. So I got in with a new bunch of cats that always was participating and listening to what they were doing, in the studio. Hadn't got that jaded yet.
Well, no, I don't even think it was that. No,
you read George Martin's book about, or not George Martin, Jeff Emmerich's book about the Beatles sessions. Man, he says Paul was the only one that would come into the studio and listen to playbacks. Everybody else would stay down in the room. But I had an experience like David Spinoza.
Oh,
the best solo I ever played in my life, I think, on a record, was on a Patrice Rushen record.
Oh my God!
Andre Crouch, not Andre, the guy who was the drummer for Oh God!
Was it
The
more?
drummer for Chaka Khan, the
Oh.
original, and his dad was a famous composer, piano player. Shit, I can't remember. Anyway,
I want to hear this story. I'll get it going here.
Anyway, he called me in to play a solo, acoustic guitar solo, on a Patrice Rushen record. And I went through it they ran it down. I played on it, man. I did a take, and the guy said, "Okay, thank you, that's it." And it turned out, I swear to God, it's still the best solo I ever played on a record, man. It just came out and was there, and thank you. And it was the right chord changes, she had these hip chord changes. It all just work came in, and it was my thing, and I ate it up and went home, man. I couldn't believe it. And I've labored over every, solos with punching in and getting this phrase and then getting that phrase and doing that on 1,000 records, and it always sounds like it, Billy Payne has constructed some cool guitar solos of mine, but they were all some pieces and stuff. But that was one case where I just went in, sat down, and played, and damn, there it was, man. It was beautiful, and I haven't done one better since then, and that was many years ago.
I mean, can we get a name on the song?
I can't remember what the song was.
Oh, you got to be kidding me! It's the best solo you ever. Was it just one take? Was it kind of like Spinoza? It was
just one take, man. I came in, and I thought, well, okay, I'm warming up here, getting a sound and da-da-da-da, and I played along with it, and they said, good, see ya.
Oh, that is so classic.
Sure?
In fairness,
back to it, and we went, yeah, that's cool. And,
in fairness, it wasn't even about what was it, the Freddie Washington possibly? I'm trying to figure out who the drummer was, the producer of that session.
Oh no, it hasn't.
I think it might have been. Was it Andre Fisher? Maybe, I don't know.
Andre Fisher, yes, and Claire Fisher is his dad.
Are you kidding me? Because his. Are you sure? Because this Fisher is spelled with SH and Claire Fisher is SCH.
Maybe, but he was definitely. It's either his uncle or his dad.
Oh my God, this is unbelievable. Smooth jazz.
Yeah,
of course,
he called me when he was having the memorial, and we talked about it every time I would see him. Every time I'd say, "Yeah, that's who, Andre Fisher. That's who it is." And every time I see him, we'd talk about Claire Fisher and stuff.
All right. Well, I'm just going to tell you right now.
He just changed his, probably spelled his name different because he liked it the other way.
I'm sure. No. I mean, there are a couple things. In fairness, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to come across that people were jaded and didn't want to listen back. I mean, I think in some cases in the studios in the heyday, you were running off, like Spinoza was running off to a jingle. He didn't have time to listen to it. You guys, you were playing stuff and then you're on to the next session. There was so much work. So, it's, in some case, but this, I just found the album, by the way, and of course it has this classic, for what it's worth, smooth jazz tribute to the best of Kirk Franklin. That's and that is the album. Tackett, Russian, Charles Mims. Well, actually, it's just all. This is interesting. I'm gonna have to do some more research on this, but I need to we got to find that track. But
the Patrice Rushen track, right?
Yeah. Well, one more voice to play for you before we go. It'll bring a smile to your face before you get back to the trumpet, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Most studio guys who play on records, their backstory is that they came into the studios from being in this band or that band and various bands, and there's a amount of dues that you pay. Most everybody's paid before they start playing on records, or at least that's in my experience. That's the guys that Hal Blaine, Earl Palmer. They came from. Earl Palmer came from playing jazz, and
absolutely, Earl Palmer. He was playing the Chitlin circuits, down south.
Yeah, and all of that, before he got to L.A. Right. and then became the before he came and owned Hollywood, played on every record there was, and then became so successful and so busy that he needed some help and met this young guy, Hal Blaine, and asked Hal, heard him play, I guess, and then said, "Hey, Hal, you want some work, man? I'll pass you some work." And I've always loved the fact that it's the reverse story from usually what it was. You know, it was the black guy helping the Jewish guy get a start. And, you know.
I'll take a guess who that is?
That's Jimmy Keltner.
That is Jimmy Salt of the Earth Keltner, man. I mean, that the black guy helping the Jewish guy, but that's really what it was. I mean, when did you? How close were you? I mean, because I know you're super modest and humble, but I mean, obviously you weren't like cranking with Tedesco and Jimmy Bond in that original amalgam. But how quickly were you into that, to the Wrecking Crew Part 2 scene kind of thing?
That was all through Jimmy, because Jimmy used Hal Blaine, Larry Knechtel, Mike Dacey, and Joe Osborne on everything he did. And so the first records that I played on was Richard Harris's second follow-up to MacArthur Park called "The Yard Went On Forever."
Right.
And I played on that record, and then there was a guy in our band named Bob Siller, the lead singer, that he did a solo album, and all the same guys and played on it, and I played. So I got to know those guys, because those sessions would go on all day long, 133 takes on a song and stuff like that.
Really?
We did Thelma Houston record, Sun Shower. So that's how I got in with those guys, and through those guys I got onto some Fifth Dimension. Well, that was again through Jimmy, Fifth Dimension record, where I met Tommy Tedesco. We played on One Less Bell together, and
yeah, no,
so
I
was like the very, I wasn't playing. One or two sessions I did with Carol Kay and all those people and the other guys. But mainly the cats that I played with was, like I said, Hal and Joe Osborne and Larry Knechtel and Mike Dacey.
Do you I know obviously you and Jimmy Keltner were in my favorite Bob Dylan amalgamation, but do you remember the first time you played with Jimmy in the studios? Was it Harry Nilsson, or was it before then? Do you have any recollection?
No, it was a Cher record.
It was a Cher record?
Yeah, we were doing Cher with Jimmy Webb was producing a Cher record, and we called, I think, the first time I played with him was on Jimmy did a Chevrolet commercial, jingle, and man. Keltner came in, and Keltner was like the new guy, man. He was like this young, skinny dude who's the new cat that I think Hal, because Hal couldn't make the date, so Hal recommended Jimmy, and so Jimmy played on that first thing, and then the next time had a opportunity for a drummer was this Cher record, and Keltner came in and played on some of that, and then he had another gig, and he introduced us to Jeff Beccaro, and then Jeff Beccaro became our guy for everything, which was, and Jim Gordon too. Jim Gordon, bless his soul, was like, he was one of our running partners, and he played on a lot of stuff. Hal had a real thing about Jimmy Gordon kind of taking his spot, but I'd say Jeff Beccaro took more gigs than Jimmy Gordon did. But Jimmy Gordon and Jeff came out of Jim Keltner, So and Jimmy Gordon probably came through Harry Nilsson as well, because we were all hanging out, and partying a lot.
At Martini's, right, or that Italian joint,
Martoni's.
Or were you? And that was the other thing, because in this first volume of the Cat, it's called The Cats Volume 1. That's my book. That's the name of the book. Keltner's talking about the Jim Keltner fan club that was put together by Kellgren and whoever had the record plant. Did you go down to those Jimmy Keltner fan club jams down there?
No, and I wasn't a part of any of that.
But
I knew the record plant was when it first came in was notorious. That place is just a wild party going on 24 hours a day. That's where we did the Cher record, man. And
exactly.
Cher would go, you can't go to the bath. They had a sauna room with a whirlpool and all this, and Cher came in and said, you can't go. They let me in, but Sly Stone had just basically taking it over and like was sitting in there, and you couldn't go in, but he let Cher in, and
I mean, it was just so much debauchery going on at that time. It's unbelievable. How often did you ever play with Ronnie Tutt at all?
Oh, yeah, many gigs.
Ronnie's he's in
many
the.
gigs.
I love Ron.
He used to live in Topanga. We used to carpool to sessions and stuff together.
Oh, that is fantastic.
He wore nothing but Hawaiian shirts, man. He was like, that was his thing, man. He was always searching out new Hawaiian shirts. But we did a lot of jingle sessions together and different, just different things before he took off with Elvis, man.
Yeah, no, that was the big gig. But there was a period of time. I'm just trying to figure out where Tackett was in this amalgamation, because I caught a hang with the great piano player Craig Durgee, and all right, and he was talking about like going back. He said there was a core group of about 18 of us, and what would happen is that so he said the first time he met Keltner, he was playing at the Lighthouse with Gabor Szabo, and then all of a sudden he's in this little studio in Torrance with me and Larry Carlton, Joe Osborne, and we're playing Fat Albert cartoons. We were hired by a guy named Richard Delvey, who was famous for starting a group called the Challengers. He liked us as a band because we could do a lot of tunes fast, and that's essentially when, Durgee goes on to talk to Jim and say, what's up, why aren't you playing jazz? And Keltner was like, there's really no money in jazz, I can't do this anymore. But were you in the Torrance studio scene, or was it always like that was so random that Durgee was talking about that? I'm like, where was that studio?
I'm not sure which one they're talking about. No, I wasn't involved with that, but I used to go down in Torrance a lot and play with a great piano player named John Hobbs. There were a bunch of country guys that I did demos for Jerry Fuller, who's a songwriter, wrote like.
What was the name of the cat you were playing with? What was his name? John Hobbs?
John Hobbs.
John Hobbs.
Yeah, he was playing for the last few years. I think he's. He was like kind of a producer, arranger as well. I mean, mostly a piano player, but we did thousands of country demos, for this guy Jerry Fuller, like $50 a tune, that kind of thing. And
it's great money.
There was him, there was John Hobbs and Joe Schmade, this bass player, and different drummers. Eddie Green, the famous Motown drummer, played on a lot of these dates, man, with us.
Wow.
A lot of country records and stuff. And we used to go down to Torrance and do stuff. And what was really funny was like some of the very, very first hip-hop records, the NWA records and stuff that were done down in Torrance, they were playing, these white country boys were playing the little musical samples that they were using on those first hip-hop records.
No way.
Yeah, these little white guys.
No way.
These little white country guys. So the guy would say, hey, like, dude, do this little bit here and do this little bits, just little things, and we'll sample them. And it was a brand new scene, and they were like, yeah, whatever. So they play a little funk. Cause there were guys that could play anything. They could play as funky as a goat, or they could play hillbilly as a goat, whatever you wanted, man. But
dude,
that was the genre that they were like. We were all making money and was doing all these country demos for all these songwriters and stuff for RCA and everything. But yeah, that was going. They were all going down to Torrance, and I did a bunch of Torrance gigs down there. It was way out of the way, man. It was like
no, it just kind of blew. You did mention one of your rhythm mates was Joe Osborne, and then that caught my attention when he said when Durgee said he was down there. It was just sort of like, dude, they were doing the Fat Albert. I mean, that was, and then now you're telling me about these Fuller. I mean, it's just. It's just you can go down these rabbit holes, Tackett, and you'll never get out of them.
There's so much going on all the time. There's 1,000 things going on all the time.
And maybe and most likely there still is. It's just the significance of music in our culture has changed so much that, and the way music is made, that people aren't playing as much. I mean, I think that's what Charlie Persip, the great drummer, told me. He said one reason we talk about all the cats from the old school is because they played every day, like all the time, multiple shows a day. the touring circuit that Persip was on was movie houses, was theaters. So you'd have a show band, and then you'd have a movie, but you'd have 3 or 4 shows a day. At the end of the day, you're playing 20, 25 shows a week, and that's the same thing with Miles and Freddie Hubbard, all these guys. So of course they just played more. They were out in the scene. It was just part of the scene, you know. It's now today. It's behind the scene. It's in the studio. It's like you said. It's a little bit processed, and so you know, my whole thing is pushing people back out in the streets, and you know, and that was my final question before I let you go was there any live music at the climate change event that you and your wife went to?
No, I didn't. But for the longest time, the time that I was there, and I was there until they started marching. No, they were just playing, you know, music over the sound system every once in a while. Not very much, and mostly they were, you know, talking and organizing.
Knowing, did you? Right. Well, I mean, but I recognize that, but you know, I mean, I have to.
Yeah, there was one truck that was sitting there, but they were playing like popular music of the day.
I just wonder your opinion on not that your wife and you were like, you know, going to Black Panther rallies with Angela Davis, but I mean, when those things were going on in Oakland, for instance, Hugh Masekela might open the set. And I look at a lot of the social consciousness movements today, and I feel like what's missing is live music. And I just wanted you to riff on that if you thought there was any validity. I think a lot of the social conscious. I mean, there are Cannonball Adderley records. The pictures on the front, it's Cannon, it's Joe Zawinul, and in the background there's Jesse Jackson. You know, did you ever play any kind of? Do you feel like that's kind of lacking in this in these movements?
I'm not that familiar with any movements, you know, to know what they do when they do what they do, as Dr. John would have said. Do what you do, and you do what you do.
Do you think?
You know, live music is always great, man. I mean, you know, my favorite live music I ever heard was outside Harlem in Havana. This carnival show that Levon would talk about, man, where they had the Midnight Rambo and stuff. It was an all-black R&B review that played at the Arkansas Livestock Festival every year, and they would bring the band, because I was only 14, 15, 16 when I would go there. Basically a strip show where they sold you saltwater taffy with prizes in it every 5 minutes with a band number in between. But basically it was an R&B review, and it was like the girls were all supposed to be from Havana, Cuba, you know. that was the conceit.
Is unbelievable.
Yeah, it was like a funky show, and I used to love it. And they'd come out and they'd play 1 or 2 songs to get people to come in, man. And that was my first hearing live music from R&B and funky black music. You know, I'd never heard any black music live, you know. And it was just, the funkiest thing I ever heard in my life, and still I think about it all the time. So I'm telling you about it right now.
Saltwater taffy, I mean...
What you're asking, but,
well, no, I just want to be clear, though.
People love live music, man. I'm sure that it would make any of these events better. And they probably do.
Right.
I just don't go to that many. I went to this one because it was really important, and I wanted to go down there.
Yeah, it's really incredible, man. I have kids, you have grandkids, you know what they're going to be faced, the challenges they're going to be faced with, and the lack of accountability. And I appreciate you always putting your heart into everything. I just want to be clear that when you were going there at 14, the band was there too. They were hanging out there.
You mean Robbie Roberts?
No, I
meant a bunch of funky black cats, man, playing in the Harlem and Havana review, man. And they would come out and play a song or two, man, and try to get you to come in and see the show.
I can't even imagine how funky that must have been, dude.
I saw at that same place. I saw Les Paul and Mary Ford. I was sitting on a
haystack.
Bale of hay.
A bale of hay. Of course you were. I can just see it now. I can just see it now.
Man, and I'm watching Les Paul and Mary Ford, and their son was playing drums, and the two of them are standing there, and they've got these 2 white Gibson guitars and have gooseneck mics coming out of the body of the guitar. There's no mic stand. It's just coming out of the guitar, and they're singing "The World Is Waiting for the Sunrise," and there's all these guitars. And I'm just like going, what in the world am I looking at, man? And I went back, and it was like the Wizard of Oz. I was too shy to go up to Les Paul or anybody, so I walked up to the drummer, and he turned out to be his son. And he said, I said, wow, what the heck's going on? And he pulled back this curtain and said, look, and there's a bunch of tape recorders, man. They had, in the middle of a field, they had set up all these stupid tape recorders, and the odds of those things all being in sync and running together, I mean, it's just incredible.
Wow.
And he had that stuff all jerry-rigged behind the screen, and they would come out and play, just the three of them, man. And it was like, what in the world, man?
Wow.
The most magical thing I'd ever heard in my life, man. And I was sitting on a hay bale in a tent, man, in Arkansas, going, what in the world is this?
We're really getting deep now. This is where I wanted to go. Well, listen, you go back. You got to get in the shed, and you got a busy day ahead of you, Fred. But it's always great to hang, man. I look forward to seeing you again real soon, brother.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't get to see you after the gig at WeedCon, man.
Dude, I was weeded. No, you know what it was? I was so blown away by everything that went on that I ducked out after, during your set with Heffington. But it was such a ball being there, man. And I have all that stuff online. It's incredible how great that music was.
Oh, cool, man. Cool.
And if you're doing anything else, if you got any other interesting gigs coming up, let
We're
me.
going to do something, everybody. We have, like I said, I tried to call Don. We're getting ready to go out on this October Little Feet run. That's going to last 3 weeks. And so I was just talking to Dominic and Don yesterday, and Dominic's making a jazz record with somebody right now this week, and Don's off in New York. So I don't know whether we're going to get together before I leave, but sometime once we get into November and December.
That trio, man, that trio was burning. You were playing the guitar like drums that day. That was unreal, man. So yeah, just keep me in the loop, man. Let me know
all right.
anything eclectic, and we'll put it together. All right.
All right, man.
Much love to you and the family, Fred. I'll talk to you.
Same to you, brother.
All
Talk
right.
to you later.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Late. Another great hang with the indelible, legendary Fred Tackett. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. Thinking about Neil Casal today. Big concert in his memory at the Capitol Theater tonight. Until next